I awoke this morning outside of Hamburg, Iowa, to find myself enveloped in the first snow and fog of the winter. My thoughts were of a boy who was born here on the 14th of March, 1927, in Hamburg, Iowa, in the midst of what was at that time a 1,000-year flood. The entire town had been engulfed by the Missouri River, and it stayed that way for many months, and pretty much the entire town was covered. The young boy whose birth was registered in the local newspaper was listed as Baby Kellison because there wasn't much hope of the infant's survival, being born in the middle of this flood, unable to get medical supplies and fresh milk. The census of the time recorded the family living at 113 Main Street, which is now this empty lot with the faint outline of the original house remaining. The father, whose name was Tobias, owned a small restaurant and bar at the site, and they lived upstairs. The mother and father decided that they were going to divorce and sell the restaurant, and the young boy found himself without a family. Early in the spring of 1940, the mother sat the young boy down and explained to him that the restaurant was failing and that there wasn't enough money anymore for them to continue on, and they were going to have to figure something else out. She packed a basket full of sandwiches, and with the last remaining money she had, she bought the young man, who was 13 at the time, a bus ticket from Hamburg, Iowa to Susanville, California. The trip was 1,541 miles, and what was waiting for him in Susanville, California was his older sister, who had married the previous year and lived with her husband in Susanville, California. What he found when he got there was a cold and snowy town and a husband who was very angry because marrying his new wife to him did not involve raising her younger brother. And the young man found himself sleeping in a cold garage, wondering where his next meal was going to come from. There was right outside of Susanville a CCC camp, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and the young man soon learned that if he showed up before dawn and was willing to help in the kitchen and wash dishes and take care of the trash and clean the latrines and do the other things, everyone kind of looked the other way, and he could eat his meals there and he could shower. And he did that for a little over a year. And one day the camp commandant came out where he was and said, "Tell me something, young man. What is your name?" And the young man told him. And he said, "If we're going to feed you and if you're going to be here all the time, you need to sign up and get a uniform." And that is exactly what he did. He lied about his age. And the 13 or 14-year-old young man joined the CCC. After December 7th, the military started drafting young men out of the CCC until the camp was nearly deserted, and news came that the camp was going to close. The camp commandant pulled the young man aside one day and told him that the camp was going to close and that he could no longer feed him anymore. And he told him that they would accept him in the Merchant Marine without very many questions asked, even though he was well under the age of enlisting. So the young man got on a bus and went down to Turlock and found the recruiter and enlisted to go in the Merchant Marines. The young man found himself at the Merchant Marine Academy in New Jersey, training on this small vessel, the Morning Star, which now sits in front of a cheese factory in Tillamook, Oregon. He would tell everyone later that when he joined, he was 16 years old, but it wasn't true. It was actually before his 16th birthday. He joined the Merchant Marines at 15 years old. And a short time later, he found himself manning deck guns, fighting off airplanes and submarines in some of the fiercest battles there was. He had a ship bombed near the island of Leyte, and he had a ship torpedoed out from under him, making the run between Philadelphia and England. He stayed in the Merchant Marines well after the war ended, bringing back soldiers and material from Europe, and finally left the Merchant Marines in mid-1949. And he made his way back to Turlock, California, where his mother now lived and his sister. He met and married a young girl that lived there in Turlock, whose family had left the Dust Bowl of Oklahoma and had made their way out to Turlock to work at a turkey processing plant, and the young couple fell madly in love and was soon married. The young man explained to his new wife that he really hadn't had much of a childhood growing up, and that he wanted to have a family, and he wanted everyone to sit down for meals together at a dining table, and he wanted them to be together and to do things together, and that was what he wanted. As I sit here outside of Hamburg, Iowa, on this cold and frosty morning, I am thinking about the young man and his new wife as they began their life together in 1950 in Turlock, California. And the reason that I am thinking about them this cold and dreary morning, the man was my father, Alan Dean Kellison, and his new little bride was my mother, Betty Darlene Kellison.